She won't stop crying, Emma's mother told the security guard. I'm sorry. Maybe we should leave. They were in the front row at Madison Square Garden, tickets her late husband had bought months ago, and Emma had been sobbing since the lights went down. Seeing Michael Jackson without her dad was too much. The security guard nodded sympathetically and started to escort them out. That's when Michael Jackson stopped singing mid-song. It was August 26, 1984. Michael Jackson was in the middle of his victory tour at Madison Square Garden, one of the hottest tickets in music history. The arena was packed with 20,000 screaming fans. The elaborate stage setup was working perfectly, and everything was going exactly as planned, except for the little girl in the front row who couldn't stop crying. Emma Rodriguez was 7 years old, and 3 weeks ago, her entire world had collapsed. Her father, David Rodriguez, had been killed in a construction accident on August 3rd. A crane malfunction at the site where he worked had caused a load to fall. David had pushed 2 co-workers out of the way, saving their lives. He died at the hospital 2 hours later. He was 32 years old. David Rodriguez had been the biggest Michael Jackson fan Emma had ever known. His love for Michael was legendary in their Queens neighborhood. He had every album, every poster, every piece of memorabilia he could afford. He'd taught Emma the moonwalk before she could tie her shoes. He'd played Billie Jean so many times their neighbors knew every word. 8 months before the accident, David had done something crazy. He'd spent nearly 2 months' salary on 2 front-row tickets to see Michael Jackson at Madison Square Garden. His wife, Maria, had been furious at first. They couldn't afford that kind of extravagance, but David had been so excited, so passionate, that she couldn't stay mad. This is going to be the greatest night of our lives, David had told Emma. Just you and me, Princessa, front row. We're going to be so close we can see him moonwalk right in front of us. Emma had counted down the days. She'd made a calendar, marking off each day with a star sticker, watching the calendar fill up as the concert got closer. She and her dad had practiced the moonwalk together every night, with David telling her stories about how Michael had invented it, how he'd changed music forever. Then August 3rd happened. The calendar was still on Emma's wall, 23 days left unmarked, when the hospital called. After the funeral, Maria didn't know what to do with the tickets. Throwing them away seemed wrong. They were the last thing David had been excited about, the last dream he'd been looking forward to. But going to the concert without him seemed impossible. Emma made the decision for her. I want to go, Mommy, she said 4 days before the show. Papi would want us to go. Mia, I don't know if that's a good idea. It might be too hard. I know it'll be hard, but Papi spent all that money. He was so excited. If we don't go, it's like his dream dies too. I want to keep it alive. Maria looked at her 7-year-old daughter, this tiny person who'd just lost her father and was somehow holding it together better than the adults around her, and made a decision. They would go. The night of the concert, Emma insisted on wearing her father's Michael Jackson Thriller t-shirt. It was a men's large, comically oversized on her small frame, hanging past her knees like a dress, but it smelled like her dad, Old Spice and coffee and love. It felt like wearing a piece of someone who wasn't there anymore. She also brought her father's ticket. He'd kept it in his wallet, looking at it every day, counting down. Emma held that ticket in her hand like a prayer, proof that her dad was supposed to be here, proof that this night was meant to include him. When they arrived at Madison Square Garden, Emma was okay. Scared, sad, but okay. She could do this. She could honor her dad by experiencing what he'd been dreaming about for 8 months. Then the lights went down. The darkness hit Emma like a wave. In the blackness of the arena, surrounded by screaming strangers, the reality crashed over her. Papi should be here. Papi should be holding her hand right now, lifting her up so she could see better. Papi should be the one screaming Michael's name, the one doing the moonwalk in his seat, the one making this night magical. Instead, there was an empty space beside her where he should have been. Emma started crying. Not the quiet tears she'd learned to hide at school, the deep, gasping sobs of a child who missed her father so much it physically hurt. She couldn't stop. The more she tried to control it, the worse it got. Maria pulled her close, trying to shield her from the chaos around them. It's okay, mija. It's okay. We can leave if you want. But Emma didn't want to leave. Leaving would mean giving up. would mean admitting that Papi's dream died with him. She shook her head, but she couldn't stop crying. The show started. Michael appeared through elaborate special effects. The crowd went insane. The music was so loud Emma could feel it in her chest. Dancers moved in perfect synchronization across the massive stage, and Emma cried through all of it. She couldn't see through her tears. She couldn't hear over her own sobs. The concert she'd waited 8 months for was happening right in front of her, and all she could feel was the absence of the person who should have been sharing it with her. By the third song, Maria made a decision. This wasn't working. Emma was inconsolable, and staying was only making things worse. They needed to go home. She flagged down a security guard. "I'm sorry," Maria said, trying to be heard over the music. "My daughter, she won't stop crying. Her father just died. These were his tickets. I think we need to leave." The security guard nodded with sympathy. He'd worked hundreds of concerts, but a grief-stricken child in the front row was something different. "I understand, ma'am. Let me help you out." He started to guide them toward the side exit, away from the crowd. That's when Michael saw them. He'd been watching the front row between songs, something he did to connect with the audience, picking out faces, feeding off the energy of the people closest to him. He'd noticed the little girl earlier, noticed she was crying, noticed the oversized Thriller shirt that clearly belonged to someone else. He'd assumed she was overwhelmed by the noise, maybe frightened by the special effects. But now he saw a security guard leading them away. The mother looked devastated. The little girl was still sobbing, clutching something in her hand. A ticket, Michael realized. And on the back of her oversized shirt, written in what looked like marker, were the words, "For you, Papi. We made it." Michael stopped singing mid-word. The band faltered, confused. The dancers stopped moving, looking around to see what was wrong. The crowd's energy shifted from excitement to confusion, but Michael was already moving. He walked to the edge of the massive stage, crouched down, and spoke directly to the security guard, pointing. Security moved quickly, unsure what was happening but following Michael's directions. Within seconds, they'd brought Emma and Maria back to their seats. Michael jumped down from the stage. The crowd gasped. This wasn't part of the show. The security team rushed forward, but Michael waved them back. He walked directly to where Emma and her mother stood, frozen in shock. Michael Jackson, the biggest star in the world, knelt down to Emma's level. "Hi," Michael said softly, his voice gentle despite the arena's chaos. "What's your name?" Emma stared at him, tears still streaming down her face, unable to speak. "It's okay," Michael said. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But I saw you crying and I saw your shirt. For you, Papi. We made it." "Can you tell me what that means?" Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. "My Papi died 3 weeks ago. These were his tickets. He was supposed to be here with me." Michael's eyes, even in the distance and stage lights, showed immediate understanding. He looked at Maria, who nodded through her tears. "He loved you so much," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "He played your music every day. He taught me to moonwalk. He said you were the greatest performer who ever lived. He said seeing you in person would be like seeing magic." Michael was quiet for a moment, and those who were close enough could see him fighting his own emotions. "Your Papi sounds like he was an amazing man," Michael said. "And you know what? He was right about one thing. Tonight is going to be magic." But not the kind of magic he was thinking of. Emma looked at him, confused. "The magic isn't in the show," Michael explained. "The magic is that you're here, that you were brave enough to come even though your heart is broken, that you're keeping your father's dream alive. That's the real magic." He stood up and held out his hand to her. "Will you come up on stage with me? I want to sing something for your Papi, and I want you to be right there so you can feel how much love is in this room. Because all that love, it's not just for me. Tonight, it's for you and your dad, too." Emma looked at her mother. Maria, crying harder now, nodded. "Okay," Emma whispered. Michael picked her up, this tiny girl in an oversized shirt clutching her dead father's ticket, and carried her through the crowd. The audience, which had been confused by the interruption, began to realize something extraordinary was happening. A murmur built into applause, then into a standing ovation as Michael climbed back onto the stage with the little girl in his arms. He set Emma down gently on an equipment case near the band, where she could see everything. Then he turned to face the crowd and his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said, his voice carrying the emotion of the moment, "I want you to meet someone very special. This is Emma. She's 7 years old. Her father was supposed to be here tonight. He bought these tickets 8 months ago because he wanted to share this night with his daughter. But Emma's father passed away 3 weeks ago. He never got to keep his promise." The crowd went completely silent, 20,000 people holding their breath. Emma's father loved music, he loved life, and he loved his daughter enough to spend 2 months' salary to give her this memory. So we're going to do something right now. We're going to sing a song for Emma's father, and wherever he is right now, we're going to make sure he knows that his little girl is okay, that she's loved, that she's not alone. Michael looked at the band, then back at Emma. He walked over and sat beside her on the equipment case. "What was your dad's favorite song?" Michael asked her quietly. "She's Out of My Life," Emma said. "He said it made him cry every time. He said you sang it like your heart was breaking." Michael nodded. That was one of the most emotionally difficult songs he performed, a ballad about loss that he could rarely get through without crying himself. "Then that's what we'll sing," Michael said, "for your Papi." The band began the gentle opening notes. Michael stayed seated next to Emma, and as he began to sing, he reached out and held her hand. The song was devastating. Michael's voice, already known for its emotional power, carried something extra that night, an understanding of what this little girl was feeling, an acknowledgement of the pain of loss, a promise that love doesn't end just because someone dies. Emma cried throughout the entire song. But they were different tears now. Not hopeless tears, but healing tears. Michael cried too, unable to hold back his emotion as he sang about loss to a child who understood it too well. When he got to the final notes, the part where his voice traditionally breaks, Michael looked at Emma and whispered, "Your Papi hears this. I promise. He hears it." By the time the song ended, there wasn't a dry eye in Madison Square Garden. 20,000 people had just witnessed something that transcended entertainment. They'd witnessed love and loss and a moment of human connection that none of them would ever forget. Michael helped Emma off the stage and back to her mother. Before they parted, Emma did something that surprised everyone. She reached up and hugged Michael Jackson, a real hug, tight and desperate and grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. "Papi would have been so happy." "I know he would have," Michael replied. "And Emma, he's proud of you, for being brave enough to come tonight, for keeping his dream alive. That's what love does. It keeps living, even when we think it's gone." Maria couldn't speak through her tears. She just mouthed, "Thank you," over and over. Michael nodded, understanding everything she couldn't say. The rest of the concert was different. Something had shifted in the arena, an awareness that life was precious, that love mattered, that sometimes the most important moments happen when you're willing to stop and see someone who's hurting. After the show, Michael's manager arranged for Emma and Maria to come backstage. Michael had changed out of his performance outfit but was still in his stage makeup. He gave Emma his white sequined glove, the one he'd been wearing during the performance. "This is for you and your Papi," Michael said. "So you'll always remember tonight. So you'll always remember that love doesn't end." He also gave her something else, a promise. "Every year on August 26th, wherever I am in the world, I'm going to dedicate She's Out of My Life to your father, to David Rodriguez, so you'll always know that someone remembers." Michael kept that promise. For the rest of his touring career, every August 26th, at whatever show he was playing, he'd pause before that song and say, "This one's for David Rodriguez. Emma, I hope you're listening." Emma always was. Emma Rodriguez is 37 years old now. She's a music therapist in New York, helping children process grief and trauma through music. On her office wall hangs that sequined glove, framed alongside the ticket her father never got to use, and a photo from that night. 7-year-old Emma on stage with Michael Jackson. She still plays Michael's music every day. She still does the moonwalk her father taught her, now teaching it to her own children. And every August 26th, she lights a candle, plays She's Out of My Life, and remembers the night a superstar stopped his show to tell a little girl that her father's love hadn't died. "My dad gave me Michael's music," Emma says now, But Michael gave me permission to grieve and still find joy. He showed me that my dad's love didn't die with him. It just found new ways to reach me. In 2009, when Michael died, Emma flew to Los Angeles for the memorial. She brought her father's Thriller shirt, the one she'd worn that night at Madison Square Garden, and laid it among the flowers and tributes outside the Staples Center. "Thank you for seeing me," she wrote on a card attached to the shirt. "Thank you for stopping. Thank you for making my father's dream come true, even though he couldn't be there. You gave me a gift that night that I've carried my whole life, the knowledge that even in our darkest moments someone might notice us and reach out. You taught me that love doesn't end. It just transforms." When Emma had her first child in 2012, she named him David Michael Rodriguez. Every night she plays Michael Jackson's music for him as he falls asleep. And when he's old enough, she'll tell him the story of his grandfather, the man who loved music and life and his daughter so much that he spent everything he had to give her one perfect night. She'll tell him about the concert that was supposed to be the greatest night of her life and instead became the worst. And then she'll tell him about the moment when Michael Jackson stopped being a superstar and became the person who saved her from drowning in grief. That's what happens when you stop for people. You don't just change one moment, you change a lifetime. The little girl in the oversized shirt grew up to help other children heal. The father who died too young left a legacy of love that lives on. And the superstar who stopped his show taught the world that sometimes the most important performance isn't the one you planned. It's the one where you simply notice someone who's hurting and choose to do something about it. If this story of grief, compassion, and the healing power of being seen moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to know that even in our darkest moments, someone might notice us and reach out.